The sun was rising gently over Birmingham, Alabama, casting a warm glow on the front lawn of Jefferson Middle School. Yellow buses hummed into the circular driveway, screeching to halts one by one as students in mismatched backpacks spilled out onto the sidewalks. There was chatter, laughter, the occasional shriek and the metallic slam of locker doors opening and closing, like rhythmic punctuation marks in the unfolding morning routine. For most kids, this was just another day. Another math quiz, another lunch to trade, another set of awkward glances in the hallway. But for Trinity Hayes, it was a battlefield hidden beneath glossy linoleum floors and motivational posters. She sat quietly in her wheelchair, parked near the edge of the main entrance, a book open in her lap, though her eyes weren't moving across the pages. Trinity watched the crowd as she always did, silently. Her dark brown hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, and her thin fingers lightly gripped the rim of her chair. No one really noticed her, not truly. Some glanced her way, out of reflex or maybe curiosity, but their eyes slipped off her. Like water on glass. She was there, but she wasn't seen. Down the sidewalk, a group of boys swaggered through the gate, their backpacks slung low, their voices loud with the kind of cocky bravado that came with being in the 8th grade and never having faced anything real. Camden Brooks led the pack, tall for his age, with curly blonde hair that flopped over his forehead and a smirk that had become his signature. "Did you see Coach Ramirez trip yesterday?" Camden laughed, elbowing his friend Mike. Man looked like a drunk giraffe. Hunter, another boy in the crew, laughed so hard he nearly dropped his water bottle. They walked like they owned the school. Like every square inch of Jefferson Middle was their territory. Camden's eyes flicked toward the front doors and then landed on Trinity. He didn't break stride, but his smirk widened. "Well, look who's in her usual spot," he said, just loud enough for his friends to hear. Mike snickered. "She ever move?" Hunter chuckled. "Only if someone pushes her." The boys laughed together. Camden tossed his backpack over his shoulder and turned slightly, his voice dipping with mock concern. "You good there, Hayes? Need a motor upgrade?" Trinity didn't respond. She never did. She knew better, but someone else had heard it this time. Not far behind them, Amia Cross walked up the steps of the school, her earbuds slung loosely around her neck, the music still faintly audible. She wasn't popular, but people knew her. Not because she tried to be known, but because there was something about her that made you remember. Maybe it was her red jacket, always zipped halfway. Maybe it was her hair, always in a different braid. Or maybe it was the way she looked at people, like she saw more than what they wanted to show. Amia didn't say anything. Not yet. Inside the school, the morning bell rang with a shrill urgency that sent everyone scurrying. The hallways filled. With the sound of sneakers squeaking and students calling out locker combos they couldn't quite remember. Trinity rolled herself down the ramp and toward her homeroom, navigating the crowd with practiced ease, hugging the lockers to avoid being bumped. She didn't like the early minutes of the day. They always felt like dodging raindrops in a storm that wasn't quite real. As she turned a corner, she caught sight of a bulletin board covered in colorful papers. "Unity Challenge, next week. Sign up now." The words were big and bold, outlined with stars and cartoon hands shaking. She stopped for a moment. Read it. Then moved on. Behind her, Camden and his crew came barreling around the same corner. It happened fast. Trinity didn't hear the skateboard. She didn't see who pushed it. All she felt was the sudden slam of plastic against metal and the jolt that sent her chair spinning sideways. Her hands flew up in a useless attempt to steady herself, but it was too late. The wheel caught the edge of a loose tile, and Trinity tipped. She hit the ground hard. Her cheek pressed against the cool tile. Her glasses skidded a few feet away. Her book thudded closed beside her. The hallway froze. Then came the laughter. Nervous, quick, cruel. Camden stood a few feet away holding his backpack straps. "Dang," he said with a chuckle. "Didn't think that would actually happen." Mike stared. "Should we?" "Nah," Hunter muttered, already walking. "She's fine." A few students hovered nearby, unsure whether to help, unsure whether it was safe. No one moved. Trinity didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just stayed there, blinking slowly, her body still, her mind buzzing, not with pain, but with something heavier, deeper. The feeling of being seen only in the moment, of your fall and then forgotten again. Minutes passed before a teacher appeared, Mrs. Langford, the science teacher. She rushed over, eyes wide. "What happened?" she asked the hallway, but no one answered. Camden and his crew were gone. The witnesses had scattered. Mrs. Langford crouched beside Trinity, helping her sit up. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Trinity nodded even though her arm ached, even though her chest felt tight. She didn't want to make a fuss, didn't want to give them anything more. Mrs. Langford called the nurse. Trinity was wheeled away. Just like that, the hallway returned to normal. Another bell rang. Another announcement crackled through the intercom. And just like that, Trinity Hayes faded back into the background, except for one person. Amia watched it all. From the end of the hall, she had seen the skateboard. She had seen Camden's smirk. She had seen the fall, the laughter, the silence that followed, and she felt something rising in her, not pity, not anger. Resolve. Tomorrow they would all see her. Trinity Hayes, even if Amia Cross had to make the whole school look. The next morning, the air at North Jefferson Middle School felt different. It wasn't the weather. It was still early spring in Kimberly, Alabama, with cool air and soft rays of sun peeking through clouds. But there was a buzz in the hallways, a subtle shift in how students walked and spoke to each other. Something about what had happened the day before, Trinity's fall, Camden's smirk, Amia's bold confrontation, had left a mark. Trinity. Hayes rolled herself down the hallway more slowly than usual, eyes scanning faces. Normally, people didn't look at her, or if they did, it was a quick glance, a flash of discomfort, maybe pity. Today, they looked longer. Not all of them. Not everyone, but enough, and not all with judgment. Some looked at her with something else in their eyes. Guilt, maybe, or shame, or curiosity. Amia Cross was already waiting by her locker. "Hey," she said, softly smiling. "Hey," Trinity replied. "You didn't have to walk with me today." Amia shrugged, brushing a lock of dark hair behind her ear. "I know, but I wanted to." It was a simple exchange, but it carried weight. For Trinity, kindness always came with a price. Either it didn't last or it came from adults who felt obligated. But Amia wasn't like that. She wasn't a teacher or a guidance counselor. She was just another 8th grader, loud, stubborn, and a little unpredictable. But right now she was also Trinity's only real ally. The morning passed in a blur of classes and whispered conversations. Camden Brooks still strutted through the hallways like he owned them, but there was something in his walk, something tighter, stiffer than before. He didn't look Trinity's way at all. He didn't call her wheels, didn't flash that mocking grin. He just avoided her. But the rumors didn't avoid her. By lunch, whispers chased her from classroom. "To cafeteria, did you hear?" He pushed her on purpose. "I heard she cried in the nurse's office." Now they're blowing it out of proportion. It's just Camden being Camden. "You think he'll get suspended?" Trinity kept her head down as she wheeled toward the cafeteria. Her hands were tired, arms aching from pushing all morning, but she didn't stop. She was used to this kind of exhaustion, physical, emotional. Some days they blended together. Today they felt like the same thing. She turned into the cafeteria and felt the usual knot in her stomach. The tables were already filling up. Cliques were in place. Athletes in the back, drama kids near the windows, band students clustered in the middle. She usually sat near the front, close to the aides, safe in her little bubble of solitude. But Amia was waving her over from the middle. Trinity hesitated. Eyes were on her, too many, but Amia kept waving, undeterred. Finally, Trinity rolled forward. "Guys, this is Trinity," Amia said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "She's sitting with us." The other kids at the table looked unsure. One of them, Lila, a quiet girl from science class, offered a small wave. Another, Jaden, shifted uncomfortably but didn't say anything. Trinity parked her chair beside Amia and pulled out her lunch bag. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. "I know," Amia replied, unwrapping a sandwich. "But I want to." The lunchroom buzzed with energy, but for the first time Trinity felt like she was part of it, even if just barely. Across the cafeteria, Camden sat with Mike and Hunter. His jaw clenched when he noticed Trinity and Amir sitting together. His voice dropped low as he leaned toward his friends. "She's turning people against me," he muttered. Hunter rolled his eyes. "Bro, just let it blow over. It's not that serious." Camden wasn't convinced. "She's making me look like a monster." "You kinda shoved her out of her chair," Mike said under his breath. Camden glared. "It was a joke." Mike didn't reply. Later that day, during sixth period, Trinity was called to the counselor's office. Her stomach flipped as she rolled. Through the quiet hallway, Mrs. Emerson, the school counselor, was already seated when she entered. "Hi, Trinity," she said gently. "Come on in." Trinity nodded and moved into the small office. The room smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Posters on the wall urged students to be kind, stand up for others, and make your voice heard. They felt ironic now. "I wanted to check on you after yesterday," Mrs. Emerson said. "How are you feeling?" "I'm fine," Trinity said automatically. Mrs. Emerson tilted her head. "Physically, yes, but emotionally." Trinity hesitated. "I don't know." "You don't have to know," Mrs. Emerson said kindly. "But we do take what happened seriously." Trinity didn't say anything. "I spoke to Mr. Raymond and the assistant principal," the counselor continued. "Camden's actions are being investigated. But more importantly, I want to make sure you feel safe." Trinity met her gaze. "I've never felt safe here. That's not new." Mrs. Emerson's face softened. "Would you be willing to talk about it? Maybe in a peer group?" Trinity blinked. "With other students?" "Yes, we've been forming a support circle, a safe space for students who've experienced bullying. Amir's already expressed interest." Trinity was surprised. "She has. She came to me this morning, said she wants to start something real, something that actually helps people." Trinity considered it. The idea of talking to other kids about what she went through made her stomach churn. But the idea of not doing anything, of letting Camden's smirk win, felt worse. "I'll think about it," she said. That night she told her mum what happened. Her mother, a nurse who worked long shifts, listened quietly as Trinity described the hallway, the fall, Amir's hand helping her up. When Trinity finished, her mum reached across the dinner table and squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. "For falling out of my chair?" "For getting back in," her mum said, "and for not letting them define you." Trinity looked down at her plate. "I'm tired of being the girl in the wheelchair," her mom nodded. "Then be the girl who changes something." The next morning, Trinity found Amir by her locker again. "I'll do it," she said. "Do what?" "The support group. The circle I'm in." Amir's eyes lit up. "Yes, that's awesome. We'll get more people. Maybe even organize a school assembly or something." Trinity raised an eyebrow. "You really don't do things halfway, do you?" Amir grinned. "Where's the fun in halfway?" As the first bell rang and students flooded the hallways, Trinity wheeled beside her new friend. The air was still charged, the whispers still present. But now, Trinity didn't feel like she had to face them alone, and that changed everything. Camden Brooks never liked feeling out of control. Control was his thing. Whether it was the court during gym class, the banter in the locker room, or the way he could make a whole hallway go silent with a smirk and a single word, he knew his power. He'd built it carefully, brick by brick since the 4th grade. And now in 8th grade, with high school just around the corner, he had no intention of letting that power slip. But something was happening, and he could feel it cracking. It started with the looks, not the usual admiration or jealousy, the kind he fed off of. These looks were different. Teachers eyed him more closely. A couple of them paused when he entered the classroom, as if silently daring him to act up. Mrs. Pennington, his math teacher, made a point of calling on him 3 times during one lesson. More than she usually did all week. Even worse were the looks from students. Whispers stopped when he walked by. A few kids he didn't even know suddenly acted like they were afraid to make eye contact. He hated it. By Wednesday, Camden's fuse was shortening. "You seeing this crap?" he hissed to Hunter as they walked out of history class. Hunter shrugged. "People are just being people." "No, man. They think I'm some kind of villain." Like I shoved Trinity down a flight of stairs or something. You did knock her out of her chair. Camden stopped walking and stared. Seriously? You believe that? Hunter hesitated. You said it was a joke, but I don't know, it didn't look like a joke. Camden felt heat rise in his chest, his hands curled into fists at his sides. So now you're turning on me too? Hunter raised his hands. Chill, bro, I'm just saying maybe you went too far. Camden didn't answer. He just turned and walked ahead, leaving Hunter behind. He wasn't used to this. He was used to people laughing at his jokes, not questioning them. He was used to teachers ignoring his antics, not pulling him aside for a quick word. He was used to being Camden Brooks, the funny guy, the popular guy, the leader. Now, he was the guy who pushed the girl in the wheelchair. Even the assistant principal had called him into the office that morning. Mr. Green sat him down in the small conference room, where the blinds were half drawn and the air smelled like printer. Ink, I want you to be honest with me, Mr. Green said, folding his hands on the table. Did you push Trinity on purpose? Camden leaned back, arms crossed. No, it was an accident. I barely touched her. Mr. Green raised an eyebrow. That's not what other students are saying. Camden narrowed his eyes. So I'm guilty until proven innocent? No one said that, Mr. Green replied calmly. But this isn't the first time we've had reports of you teasing Trinity. I joke with everyone. Not everyone ends up hurt. Camden bit the inside of his cheek. He hated the way the room made him feel small. He hated the way Mr. Green's words echoed in his head long after the conversation ended. By lunch, he wasn't even hungry. He just wanted to disappear. Instead, Fove sitting at his usual table, Camden ducked into the gym. It was mostly empty, just a few kids shooting hoops at the far end. He climbed the bleachers and sat alone near the top row, his back against the cold wall. He took out his phone and opened Instagram. Amia's latest post was right there, a photo of her and Trinity from the day before. Trinity had a faint smile on her face. Amia had her arm draped casually around her shoulders, like they'd been best friends forever. The caption said, "Real. Friends help you get back up. Literally no more bullies." The post already had 75 likes and a string of comments. Camden stared at it, his jaw tightening. He clicked into the comments. "Y'all are heroes." Camden better watch himself. "So proud of you girls." Each comment was a pinprick. Every like felt like a vote against him. He exited the app and leaned his head back, his stomach twisted. Not with guilt, at least not the kind he was willing to admit, but with something uglier, a sense of being hunted, of losing his grip. It wasn't supposed to go this way. He thought back to 6th grade, the first time he'd ever made a joke about Trinity. It had been in the cafeteria. She dropped her tray, and someone laughed. He'd shouted, "She needs a license for that chair." The laughter had exploded around him, and Trinity had turned red. He remembered the rush he felt, the power. Back then it had been easy. She never said anything, just rolled away, quiet and angry, but now she had a voice. Worse, she had Amia cross. Amia had always been a wild card. She wasn't afraid to speak up. She didn't care who liked her or who didn't. Camden used to think it made her cool in a weird way, untouchable. But now she was turning that fire on him. He knew what happened when someone like Amia decided to go public. First came the sympathy, then came the outrage, then came the consequences. And if there was one thing Camden hated more than being ignored, it was being punished. He didn't go back to class after lunch. Instead, he wandered the back hallway near the auditorium, where the janitors stored old props and unused equipment. There, he ran into someone unexpected, Mr. Taylor, the school's theater director. "Shouldn't you be in 7th period?" Mr. Taylor asked, raising an eyebrow. Camden shrugged. "I needed a minute." Mr. Taylor looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Sometimes a minute's all we need. Sometimes we need a whole conversation." Camden didn't reply. "You know," Mr. Taylor continued, walking toward a stack of chairs, "when I was your age, I thought being the funny guy would protect me, make people like me. Turns out it made me lonely." Camden blinked. "I'm not lonely." Mr. Taylor didn't argue. He just smiled softly. "Sometimes the person who laughs the loudest is hiding the most." Camden shifted on his feet. "You think I'm hiding something. I think you're figuring things out. And That's okay. But don't let pride stop you from making things right. Mr. Taylor walked past him, humming under his breath, and left Camden alone in the hallway again. That night, Camden stared at the ceiling of his room, the lights off, his phone silent on his nightstand. He thought about Trinity's face when she hit the floor. He thought about how fast Amir had moved to help her. He thought about how no one had moved for him since. He wondered, just for a second, what it would feel like to say sorry, not for show, not as a joke, but for real. But then he shook his head. Apologies were weakness, and weakness got eaten alive. Still, as he drifted to sleep, one phrase Mr. Taylor had said kept echoing, "Don't let pride stop you from making things right." And for the first time, Camden wasn't sure what he'd do next. It began with whispers, and soon it became a wave. The morning after Amir's Instagram post, something in the air felt different. The hallways weren't just buzzing, they were charged. Conversations paused when certain people walked by. Eyes shifted, glances exchanged. But unlike before, it wasn't Camden soaking up the attention. It was Trinity. And for the first time in a long while, she wasn't invisible. It started small. As Trinity wheeled into school that morning, a girl she barely knew, Danny from science class, held the door open and said, "Hey, I saw that post. You're awesome." Then came Malik, a quiet kid from art, who gave her a nod and a half smile before disappearing into the crowd. Even Ms. Carmichael, the school counselor, stopped her in the hallway. "I just want to say I'm proud of you," she said gently, resting a hand on Trinity's shoulder. "If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Trinity didn't quite know what to say. She wasn't used to being seen, at least not like this. People usually noticed her only when she rolled into a desk or had to ask for help reaching a book. But now they were noticing her, not her wheelchair, not her limits, but her voice. Her courage. It felt good, overwhelming but good. In homeroom, Amir gave her a little salute from across the room. The moment Trinity sat down, 3 kids came up to ask if they could sit with her at lunch. "I mean, you stood up to Camden," one of them said, clearly impressed. "Not many people would have done that." Trinity's eyes widened. "It wasn't just me." "Amir, yeah, but you were the one who had to live it." Later that day, Ms. Ellis asked Trinity if she'd be willing to speak during next month's assembly on empathy and student leadership. "We're putting together a student panel," the teacher explained, "and I think your voice could really make an impact." Trinity stared for a second, unsure if she heard right. "Me? Speak at the assembly?" Ms. Ellis smiled. "Yes. If you think about it." For the first time, Trinity realized that what had happened in that hallway wasn't just a bad memory. It had started something. A ripple. A shift. But not everyone liked the shift. By the end of third period, Camden had cornered Amir near the vending machines. His eyes were sharp, voice low. "What are you trying to do? Turn the whole school against me?" Amir didn't flinch. "No, you did that yourself." "I didn't mean to hurt her. You meant to humiliate her." Camden clenched his jaw. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then help me understand," she snapped, arms crossed. "Because all I've seen is you tearing people down just to keep your throne." He took a step closer. "You think this makes you a hero, some kind of justice warrior?" She raised an eyebrow. "No, but it makes me a better person than you." Camden laughed, bitter. "Wow. You really think people care about this? They'll forget in a week." "Maybe, but Trinity won't, and neither will I." Then she walked away, leaving him standing there, fists curled and heart racing. He didn't understand how everything was unraveling so fast. He used to have the whole school eating out of the palm of his hand. One joke, one smirk, and they'd fall in line. But now even Hunter barely looked at him. Even worse, people were starting to talk back. By lunch, a new post was circulating. A student named Jaya had shared a video from last month, one Camden had forgotten even existed. In it, he was mocking another classmate, a boy with a speech impediment. The laughter in the background was loud, too loud. Watching it now made Camden's stomach twist in a way he didn't expect. The caption read, "It's not just Trinity, we've let this go on too long." The comments were worse. "This is the guy people called a leader." Why did we laugh? Not funny anymore. Camden stared at his screen in disbelief. That video had gotten him applause back then. People had reposted it, added emojis, made jokes. No one had called him out. But now, the world had flipped. The library. Trinity scrolled through the same video, her breath catching in her throat. She remembered that boy, Kevin. He never spoke much after that incident. No one had really noticed, but she remembered. She remembered what silence felt like. Now Kevin's name was trending in their little school circle. Students were messaging him, apologizing for laughing, asking if he was okay. A few even invited him to sit at their lunch table. The ripple kept growing, and it wasn't just about Camden anymore. At the back of the library, Amia sat with Trinity, watching it all unfold. Her expression was unreadable. "You okay?" Trinity asked. Amia nodded slowly. "I think so, just watching it all happen. It's like waking up and seeing everything differently." Trinity tilted her head. "You mean like the school's waking up?" "Yeah," Amia said softly. "And it's not just about one kid being mean. It's about all of us pretending it was normal." Trinity thought about that, about the times she'd smiled through pain, about the times she'd told herself Camden didn't really mean it, that it was just a joke, that she shouldn't make waves. Now the waves were here, and she was part of them. That afternoon, Ms. Ellis asked Amia and Trinity to stay after class. She looked at both girls with a calm, steady gaze. "There's been a lot of movement today," she said. "Students are talking, teachers are talking. And I want you both to know, I'm proud of you, but I also want to make sure you're safe." "Safe," Amia repeated. "This kind of attention can bring pushback. People don't always like change. So if anything happens, you come to me immediately, understand?" They nodded. Then Ms. Ellis added, "Also, Trinity, about that assembly. We'd like to move forward with your speech. Would you be willing to work with me on it?" Trinity hesitated. She thought of her younger self, the one who used to imagine disappearing into her chair, rolling through hallways unnoticed. The one who cried in the nurse's office after Camden's jokes, telling the nurse, "I'm fine," even when she wasn't. Then she thought of today, of Kevin, of Jaya, of students reaching out, saying sorry, offering kindness instead of silence. "Yes," she said, voice steady. "I'd like that." When Trinity left the classroom, a wave of warmth rushed through her. The hallway felt brighter, the whispers no longer sharp, but soft, supportive, empowering. That night, her inbox was full. Messages from classmates, people she barely knew reaching out with kind words. Some shared their own stories, times they'd been teased, pushed, ignored. Times they wished they'd spoken up. The ripple was real. But somewhere, not far away, in a dark room lit only by a screen, Camden scrolled through the same messages, and all he saw was the tide turning against him. For the first time, he wasn't angry, he was afraid. The Monday after the weekend storm felt different. Trinity had spent her Sunday preparing for the student assembly with Ms. Ellis. They worked on her talking points, empowerment, dignity, using your voice. But underneath, Trinity felt something else rising, something she hadn't let herself feel for years. Power. But power, she quickly realized, always came with a cost. When she rolled into school Monday morning, the hallways didn't buzz with admiration the way they had on Friday. There was still acknowledgement, nods, cautious smiles, but now there was tension in the air too. A different kind of charge. A few kids looked away when she passed, others whispered just a little louder than necessary. By lunch, Trinity knew something. "Was off, did you see it?" Amia asked, sliding into the seat beside her. "See what?" Amia pulled out her phone and turned it toward Trinity. On the screen was a private Instagram story, a reposted message from someone's close friends. List. The caption read, "So now if you say the wrong thing, you're a bully? Welcome to Woke High, the kind of free speech." Beneath it, a string of laughing emojis. The account belonged to one of Camden's old teammates from JV basketball, Trinity's heart. "Zank, it's spreading," Amia said, her voice tight. "They're painting you as the problem now, like you're the reason Camden's life is falling apart." "He's facing consequences for being cruel," Trinity muttered. "That's not the same thing." Try telling them that. Later that day in English class, Trinity felt it more directly. As she began to answer a question about a character's motivation, someone coughed loud behind her. A fake cough. Exaggerated. Then another. Then a whisper. "Here comes the wheelchair wisdom." The words cut like glass, and the room went still. Trinity froze. She knew that voice. Sasha, a junior who used to be Camden's biggest fan and had once made a TikTok defending alpha male humor. Ms. Jensen, their teacher, looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" she said, glancing around the room. "Who said that?" Silence. Trinity could feel her throat tighten, her hands shake. She had just started feeling brave, just started lifting her voice. And now, someone was trying to shut it down all over again. "I did," Sasha said finally, crossing her arms. "It's just a joke." "Well, it's not funny," Ms. Jensen snapped. "Apologize." Sasha rolled her eyes. Whatever. But Trinity didn't want an apology. What she wanted, what she needed, was for this not to be happening again. After class, Amia caught up with her near the lockers. "That was disgusting," she said, angry. "I'm reporting her." "No," Trinity said quickly. "Don't." "What? Why?" "Because that's what they want, to turn this into a war. If I start acting like I'm above everyone, they'll say I'm using this moment to control people." Amia shook her head. "You shouldn't have to. Be strategic, just to be respected." Trinity said nothing. She didn't have the energy to explain that it wasn't just about respect anymore. It was about survival. The pushback had started, and it was gaining traction. Meanwhile, Camden was in damage control mode. He'd spent the weekend watching his follower count plummet. Not drastically, but enough to sting. And worse than that, his texts were going unanswered. Hunter stopped replying. Claire, the girl he'd been casually talking to, had left him on read. Even Coach didn't look him in the eye this morning, and now even the sympathy was twisted. One of his friends said, "Dude, they're canceling you like you're some celebrity or something." Camden scoffed. "Yeah, for what? Joking around?" "You just picked the wrong target," the friend muttered. "The girl in the wheelchair? Not a good look, man." It stung because it was true, the tides had turned, but Camden still didn't fully get why. He had grown up in a world where teasing was currency, and the person who controlled the laugh controlled the crowd. That was how it always worked. He didn't understand how quickly people were abandoning him now, like rats off a sinking ship. Desperate, Camden made a move. That night, he posted a video to his story. Shirt slightly wrinkled, background blurred, voice heavy with what he hoped sounded like remorse. "Hey guys, I know there's been a lot going on lately, and I just want to say I never meant to hurt anyone. I was just trying to be funny like I always am. But I see now that some of the things I said really affected people, and I'm sorry, especially to Trinity. I didn't think about how it felt to be her. That's on me." He ended the video with a long sigh and turned the camera off. Within minutes, the comments rolled in. "Too late. Damage control much? Should have thought about it before laughing at her for a year straight." But a few others chimed in with support. "At least he's owning up. Let's not act like we weren't laughing too. He's still a kid, let him grow." And suddenly the line wasn't so clear anymore. At school the next day, Trinity noticed something strange. There were more whispers, but not in one direction. The school had split. Some people still supported her. Others were annoyed by the attention. A few were vocally defending Camden now, saying things like, "He's already apologized," or "Why can't we move on?" At lunch, Amir showed Trinity a new group chat that had popped up. The real ones. A bunch of students, some they knew, others they didn't, were openly mocking the whole situation, calling Trinity dramatic, saying Amir was chasing clout. "They're trying to flip the narrative," Amir said. "Turn this whole thing into a pity party for him." "It was never about him," Trinity said, hurt creeping into her voice. "It was about the way we let people get treated, how no one said anything." Amir nodded. "Yeah, but truth makes people uncomfortable, and when people get uncomfortable, they get mean." That night, Trinity didn't sleep much. She sat in her room staring at her speech for the assembly. Words she had once written with fire and conviction now felt heavier. riskier. But then she opened a message. It was from Kevin. "Hey, I saw everything. Just wanted to say thank you for speaking up. I didn't think anyone remembered what happened. To me, I do every day, so yeah, thank you. You helped more than you know." Trinity sat there, her chest tight, eyes wet. The pushback was real, the ridicule was sharp. But moments like this, they made it worth it. She took a deep breath, opened her speech and began revising it. Stronger, clearer, no more apologies. No more softening the truth for people who didn't want to hear it. If they were uncomfortable now, good. It meant they were finally listening. Trinity's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the index cards she'd rewritten for the 5th time that week. The gym was packed. Folding chairs stretched in every direction, filled with students, teachers, faculty, even a few parents who had heard something was happening and wanted to see it for themselves. The walls pulsed with nervous energy. Phones were out. Whispers floated like static. She was moments away from speaking, from standing in front of everyone, not just as the girl in the wheelchair, but as Trinity James, the one who broke the silence. Behind the stage curtain, Ms. Ellis placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You ready?" "No," Trinity said honestly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Ellis smiled. "That's how you know you are." Principal Caro took the mic first. He gave the usual preamble, something about student leadership, productive dialogue, and learning from mistakes. Trinity heard the words but didn't absorb them. She was focused on the crowd, focused on the eyes, some kind, some curious, some skeptical. And she knew somewhere out there, Camden was watching too. "And now," Caro concluded, "one of our own would like to share a few words. Please welcome Trinity James." Applause. Light at first, then louder. Some of it felt genuine. Some of it felt polite. Trinity couldn't tell which. Her wheels turned slowly as she rolled to center stage. She gripped the mic, and she breathed. "Hi." It echoed through the speakers. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "My name is Trinity James. I'm a junior. I'm in robotics club. I read too many graphic novels, and I was born with spina bifida. That's why I use this wheelchair. You might have seen me around. Some of you have laughed at me, some of you have said nothing, some of you, I think, maybe just didn't know what to say." Silence. A few heads turned. Phones were lifted higher. I used to think silence was safety, that if I just stayed quiet, the teasing would pass, that if I didn't make waves, people would leave me alone. But silence isn't safety. Silence is surrender, and I'm tired of surrendering. Someone near the front shifted uncomfortably. Another student leaned in. "I want to tell you what bullying feels like, not the cartoon version we talk about during orientation week. I mean the real kind, the kind that hides in jokes, that pretends it's just being funny, the kind that starts with one person and spreads. That kind of bullying doesn't leave bruises, it leaves doubts. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Should I even be here?" She paused. Her hands stopped trembling. "Last week I hit a breaking point, but I also found my voice, and when I used it, something incredible happened. People started listening. Some people were angry, others were relieved. But either way, it made one thing clear. We need to change how we treat each other." A few murmurs now, and nods, real ones. "I'm not here to cancel anyone," she said firmly. "I don't believe in that. I believe in growth, in owning up. I believe people can change, but only if they're willing to face what they've done." She didn't say Camden's name, she didn't have to, everyone knew. "And it's not just about me," she continued. "There are others here, students who've been teased for the way they walk, or talk, or love, or worship. People who eat lunch alone, who flinch when certain names are called. If we keep pretending that's normal, then we're not just bystanders, we're accomplices." Now the room felt still, heavy, listening. This school has a chance to be better. Not perfect, but better. That starts with acknowledging pain and then doing something about it. So to anyone out there who's ever felt invisible, I see you. And to anyone who's been the reason someone felt invisible, it's not too late to do better. She looked across the rows of students. Her voice didn't shake. "I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for courage. Yours, mine, all of us together. Trinity stopped speaking. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It wasn't dismissive. It was weighty. And then applause. Not forced. Not mechanical. Sustained. As she rolled off stage, Ms. Ellis was waiting with tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. But even as the gym filled with clapping, not everyone was happy. Camden sat near the back row, arms folded. His face, unreadable. Around him the reactions varied. Some students clapped reluctantly, a few others barely moved. One of them, Sasha, was already texting. Camden could tell it was about Trinity. "She's making herself the face of everything now," someone behind him muttered. "Like she's the only one who's ever had a hard time." Camden didn't respond. He couldn't, because somewhere, deep inside, Trinity's words had struck him too. After the assembly, the hallways were buzzing. Teachers complimented her. Strangers approached her with nods and quiet affirmations. "I wish I'd said something earlier," one girl admitted. "Had no idea," said another. Trinity smiled politely but kept moving. It was overwhelming, like walking through a wave of sound, praise, guilt, admiration, awkwardness. But what cut through the noise was Kevin. He found her outside the building, near the bench by the magnolia tree. "You meant every word, huh?" he said. Trinity nodded. "Every single one. You said something no one ever said for me." She looked at him. "Then maybe now's your turn. Your story matters too." He gave her a quiet smile and walked away. But Trinity knew. It had begun. That afternoon something changed online. Instead of backlash, Trinity's speech was being shared, not just inside the school but across town. A teacher posted a clip on Facebook. A parent reposted it on Twitter. Someone on TikTok layered it over music and tagged it. Speak Up Challenge. By evening, Trinity's words had gone farther than she imagined. That night, her mom sat beside her on the couch, eyes misty. "You know, I always saw your strength," she said. But today the whole world saw it too. Trinity leaned against her shoulder. "I was scared," she admitted. "You still did it. That's what courage is." As they sat there, Trinity's phone buzzed again. Another DM. It wasn't a thank you, it was from Camden. "Can we talk?" Trinity stared at the message for a long time. She didn't reply. Not yet. Because speaking up was only the beginning. Now came the harder part, deciding what to do when even those who hurt you finally start to listen. Trinity stared at her phone screen for the third time that morning. Camden's message still hovered there like a question mark she didn't know how to erase. "Can we talk?" 4 words. That's all he wrote. No apology, no context, no hint of regret. And yet somehow those 4 words had been bouncing around in her brain for 2 days. She hadn't answered. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how. "Why are you letting this take up so much space in your head?" Kevin asked as they sat in the library during study period. "I don't know," Trinity admitted. "Maybe because I need to know what he wants. I need to hear it." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "Or maybe you're hoping he'll say something that finally makes it all make sense." She didn't respond. Because maybe he was right. Camden Montgomery wasn't just another bully. He was the bully, the one who turned her disability into a punchline, who led the laughs, who gave others permission to mock her without consequences. And now, after everything, he wanted to talk? Kevin glanced around, lowered his voice. "Just be careful. People like Camden, they don't change overnight. Sometimes they just find new ways to control the story." "I know," Trinity said, but even as she said it, a part of her wasn't sure. That evening, a cold wind cut through the neighborhood. Trinity sat in the living room, phone in her lap, the fire crackling behind her. Her mom was grading papers in the kitchen, humming a gospel tune softly under her breath. And then 3 sharp knocks at the front door. Trinity's heart jumped. She wheeled herself forward cautiously and pulled the door open. It was him. Camden, wearing a dark hoodie, jeans, and that familiar air of defensiveness masked as detachment. But this time there was something different in his eyes. Not arrogance, not smugness, nervousness. "Hey," he said. His voice was low, almost uncertain. Trinity didn't move. "You showed up at my house?" "I didn't know how else to do." "You didn't respond." That was a clue. Camden swallowed hard. Can I talk to you? For 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. She hesitated. Outside, she said finally, and followed him to the porch. The wind whipped around them. A gust scattered a few dry leaves across the steps. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Then Camden began. I watched your speech, he said. The whole thing, twice. Trinity folded her arms, keeping her voice even. And? It hit me, he said. Like, really hit me. You weren't exaggerating. You were just telling the truth. And I guess I needed to hear it from you out loud. She waited. Is this your version of an apology? Camden sighed. I deserve that. Look, I was awful. Not just to you, to other kids too, but especially you. I made you feel like crap for existing. I laughed when others did. I led them. And I don't know why exactly. I think part of me just liked the attention. It made me feel bigger than I was. You mean you liked power? Trinity said. He nodded. Yeah. That's it. There was another pause. The porch light flickered slightly. I don't expect you to forgive me, he added quickly. I don't even know if I would if I were you. But I needed to say it to your face. I was wrong, I was cruel, and I'm sorry. Trinity didn't speak right away, because the truth was, it did feel good to hear. Not perfect, not healing, but good. Still, she needed more than words. Why now, she asked. Why are you really here? Camden looked down at his shoes. Because the guy who watched your speech didn't recognize the guy in the videos anymore. The kid laughing in the hallway, tipping your chair, making jokes. That kid was me, and I hated seeing him. I hated knowing what I'd done. And I think I finally got tired of pretending it didn't matter. Trinity's breath caught in her throat. You hurt me, she said. Her voice trembled now. You made me scared to walk through my own school. You made me feel like I was less, like I didn't belong in my own skin. You can't fix that with 5 minutes and a sorry. I know, Camden said. But I had to start somewhere. For a moment they just stood there, two kids who had once lived in completely separate worlds, now bound by the very pain one of them had caused. I'm not giving you redemption, Trinity said. That's not my job. I'm not asking for it, Camden replied. But if there's anything I can do, anything at all, I'll do it. She looked at him closely. Then start by talking to the people who laughed with you. Tell them what you told me. Own it publicly. Don't leave me to carry this story alone. Camden looked terrified, but nodded. Okay, I will. And don't expect applause, she added. I won't. He turned to go, but paused. Thank you for even listening. Trinity didn't respond. She watched him walk down the driveway and disappear into the night. Later that night, she journaled until past midnight. Wrote everything down. His words, her feelings, the way her chest tightened and loosened again. Something had shifted. The next morning, a quiet storm swept through campus. Word spread fast. Camden had posted a video, a real one. No edits, no excuses. In it, he admitted everything. Named names, took the blame, described the impact of his actions on Trinity, on others. He didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't cry. He just told the truth, and the school listened. Some students reacted with shock, others with admiration. A few dismissed it as damage control, but none could ignore it. Even Kevin, skeptical as he was, approached Trinity in the hallway. Okay, he said. That took guts. I didn't do it for him, she replied, but maybe someone out there needed to see that people can change, if they try. In the following days, something unexpected began to blossom. Conversation. Kids began opening up. Teachers hosted open circles. Ms. Ellis facilitated anonymous listening sessions. Students who'd once been silent started speaking. Not all of it was easy, but it was real. Trinity had once dreamed of surviving high school quietly, invisibly. Now she was leading something bigger, and for the first time she felt seen. Not because she was different or because she'd been hurt, but because she dared to speak and others dared to follow. The silence was broken, and in its place something new was taking root. The halls of Roosevelt High felt different. Not because the lockers had been repainted or the schedules rearranged, but because the atmosphere had shifted, subtly but undeniably. A new kind of energy pulsed beneath the surface. It was as if the entire school had collectively exhaled after months of holding their breath. Trinity knew the change was real because it showed up in small ways, in the way students greeted each other in the halls, not with guarded nods or averted eyes, but with something softer, more genuine. In the way teachers started to loosen their grip on rigid lesson plans to allow for conversations that mattered. In the way Camden Montgomery, once the king of cruelty, became a reluctant catalyst for something far bigger than himself. It had started with his apology video. The moment Camden pressed upload, Trinity felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. She wasn't naive. She knew people could be cruel, that forgiveness was never guaranteed and that words alone didn't erase years of pain. But the honesty in his confession struck a chord, breaking the spell of silence that had surrounded the bullying culture at Roosevelt. The video went viral within the school community, shared hundreds of times, watched in classrooms, whispered about in cafeterias. Some students reacted with disbelief. Could the same Camden who tormented Trinity stand there on screen, owning up to his actions? Others expressed cautious optimism, wondering if this was the beginning of a genuine change, or just another act to save face. Teachers were divided too. Principal Harris called an emergency meeting the day after the video dropped. The school counselors, the anti-bullying committee, and a handful of student representatives gathered in the conference room, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Ms. Ellis, the English teacher and Trinity's mentor, took the lead. "We're standing at a crossroads," she said. "Camden's admission is a start, but what we do next will define who we are as a community." One by one, voices rose with ideas, more awareness programs, student-led panels, anonymous feedback boxes, restorative justice circles. Trinity listened, her mind spinning with the possibilities. This was her moment, an opportunity to turn pain into purpose. Outside school, the news spread beyond the walls of Roosevelt. Local journalists picked up the story of the bullied girl and the bully who finally faced his demons. Social media buzzed with debates and discussions about accountability, redemption, and the power of speaking up. Trinity's phone rang non-stop, with interview requests. She was nervous but resolved. She spoke about her journey, not just the hurt, but the healing, about the importance of empathy and the courage it took to break the silence. Meanwhile, Camden faced backlash too. Some students mocked his apology, accusing him of weakness or manipulation. Others refused to forgive, holding on to scars too fresh to heal. But slowly, a handful of peers began reaching out to him, curious, skeptical, but willing to listen. 1. Afternoon. Trinity found herself sitting across from Camden in the school's counseling office. The walls were painted a calming blue. Posters about kindness and respect adorned the corners. The air smelled faintly of lavender from a diffuser in the corner. "I wanted to thank you," Camden said quietly, "for not shutting me out after." "I apologized." Trinity looked down at her hands. "It's not about me, it's about what happens next. You said you wanted to make this right. Now's your chance." He nodded, then hesitated. "It's harder than I thought, facing people, hearing their pain, knowing I caused it." "That's how it should be," Trinity replied. "But don't let guilt paralyze you. Use it to change." Over the following weeks, Roosevelt High began implementing new programs inspired by the incident. Peer support groups were formed, open mic sessions allowed students to share stories, and teachers received training on recognizing and addressing bullying behaviors. Trinity volunteered to co-lead one of the groups alongside Kevin and a few other students. They called it the ripple effect, a nod to the idea that one small act could spread wide and deep, touching lives in unexpected ways. At the first meeting, a dozen students gathered in a sunlit classroom. Some were shy, others skeptical, but all shared a common desire to create a safer, kinder school. Trinity spoke first. "We all know what it feels like to be isolated, to be hurt by words or actions that feel bigger than us. But here we're choosing something different. We're choosing to listen, to understand, and to support one another." The room was quiet. For a moment, Then a boy raised his hand. What if people don't want to change? What if they just keep hurting others? Trinity met his gaze. Then we keep showing up. We keep speaking out. Change isn't instant, and it isn't easy. But every time we choose kindness over cruelty, we chip away at the darkness. The group nodded, some faces softening. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. Outside the school, Trinity's story inspired others. Parents organized. Community forums on bullying prevention. Local non-profits reached out to collaborate. Even city officials invited Trinity to speak at a youth leadership conference. Despite the newfound attention, Trinity remained grounded. She knew the real work was in the everyday moments, the whispered words of encouragement in hallways, the small acts of bravery by students refusing to join in the laughter at someone else's expense, the teachers who stayed late to mentor those struggling to find their place. One afternoon, as Trinity wheeled herself through the quad, she noticed a younger girl sitting alone on a bench, her eyes cast down. Without thinking, Trinity approached. "Hey," she said softly, "mind if I sit?" The girl looked up, surprised. "Sure." They talked quietly, Trinity listening as the girl shared stories of feeling invisible and afraid. When it was time to leave, Trinity smiled. "You're not alone anymore." That moment, simple and unremarkable to some, was exactly the kind of ripple Trinity wanted to create. Back in her room that night, Trinity reflected on the journey, from the pain of bullying, through the courage to speak, to the slow, messy process of healing and change. She knew the road ahead was long. There would be setbacks, doubts, and moments of fear. But she also knew this: silence was no longer an option. The ripple had started, and nothing could stop it now. And for the first time in a long time, Trinity believed in the power of her own voice, not just to tell her story, but to shape the stories of others. The first days of spring brought a fresh wave of hope and uncertainty to Roosevelt High. The air outside smelled faintly of blooming cherry blossoms, but inside the school's walls, a different kind of growth was taking place, one much harder to see, yet far more profound. Trinity found herself at the center of this change, both an unwilling symbol and a willing participant. The fallout from Camden's apology video and the formation of the Ripple Effect group had shifted the school's culture, but deep divisions remained. Some students who had once turned away from Trinity now approached her with tentative smiles and quiet apologies. Others still whispered in the halls, unwilling to let go of old grudges or prejudices. And Camden himself struggled under the weight of expectations, both his own and those of a community desperate for proof that he was sincere. The challenge was clear: transforming Roosevelt High from a place of fear and isolation into one of trust and community would take more than words. It would require dismantling walls, invisible barriers built by years of pain, misunderstanding, and silence. One afternoon, Trinity sat in the school library with Ms. Ellis, discussing the next steps for their anti-bullying campaign. Ms. Ellis adjusted her glasses, her eyes warm but serious. "Words can open doors," she said slowly, "but they can't tear down walls alone. We need to create spaces where students can be truly heard, where they don't just listen, but understand each other." Trinity nodded. "That's why I think we should start a series of dialogues, small, guided conversations between students from different social groups. Maybe even bring in parents and teachers. Real talk without judgment." Ms. Ellis smiled. "I like that. It's ambitious, but necessary. Walls aren't built overnight, and they won't fall overnight either." They spent the next weeks planning, carefully. Flyers were posted, announcements made, and invitations sent out. The first dialogue group was small, a mix of students who rarely crossed paths: athletes, artists, tech geeks, and those who'd been bullied or accused of bullying. Trinity felt a knot of nerves the morning of the first meeting. Would anyone come? Would they be willing to speak honestly? Or would old tensions ignite new conflicts? When the students gathered in the old auditorium, the energy was tentative but curious. Ms. Ellis opened the session by sharing a story of her own high school struggles, breaking the ice with humor and vulnerability. Then it was Trinity's turn. She took a deep breath and looked around the room. This is a place to be honest, to listen without interrupting, to speak without fear of judgment. We're here to break through the walls that separate us. The first few exchanges were halting, filled with polite distance and rehearsed answers. But as the session unfolded, the walls started to crack. One student, Jasmine, a quiet girl from the art club, spoke about feeling invisible in a school that celebrated athletic achievements above all else. Another, Marcus, a football player, admitted he'd never understood why some students felt scared or excluded, because his own world had always been tight-knit and protective. Then Camden spoke. His voice was raw but steady as he admitted the pain he had caused, not just to Trinity but to others. "I was scared," he said, "scared of being weak, scared of losing my status. I thought bullying made me stronger. But it just made me lonely." The room grew silent, and for the first time Trinity saw many faces soften, not with pity but with empathy. Over the following weeks, the dialogue groups became a regular fixture. Stories were shared of fear, hope, regret, and courage. Students began to see each other not as labels, but as complex people, each carrying their own struggles. Teachers joined in too, learning from their students and sharing their own experiences. Even Principal Harris attended one session, acknowledging the need for leadership that went beyond policies and rules. Trinity often marveled at the transformations she witnessed. Rivalries softened, cliques mingled, and students who had once been enemies found unexpected common ground. Yet progress was not linear. Setbacks occurred, harsh words exchanged, rumors resurfaced, moments of doubt and anger. But each time, the group returned to the shared commitment to understanding and healing. Outside school, Trinity's efforts caught the attention of local organizations. She was invited to speak at a youth summit, where she challenged adults to listen to young voices and take bullying seriously as a community issue. At home, her parents noticed the toll the work took on her, but also the strength it gave her. "You're changing lives," her mother said softly one evening, "including your own." Trinity smiled, but knew the hardest walls remained, the ones inside herself. She wrestled with feelings of anger, betrayal, and vulnerability, but she also discovered resilience and purpose. One afternoon, as she practiced her speech for an upcoming event, she paused and looked out the window at the schoolyard. Students were laughing, playing, some even sharing stories in small groups, a patchwork of connections slowly growing stronger. She thought about the journey, from silence and pain to voice and hope, about the ripples that had spread far beyond what she imagined. Most of all, she thought about the future, not just hers, but that of Roosevelt High, and every student who deserved to feel safe, seen, and valued. Trinity turned back to her notes, ready to break through even more walls. The momentum Trinity had helped build over the past weeks was undeniable, but the true test of change is always in the moments when everything seems to hang by a thread. Roosevelt High was no exception. The school was preparing for the much-anticipated Spring Assembly, an event that traditionally showcased talent, celebrated achievements, and, for many students, cemented social hierarchies. This year, however, the assembly took on a different tone, a symbol of the ongoing transformation taking place inside Roosevelt. In the days leading up to the event, Trinity worked tirelessly with the Ripple Effect group. They organized workshops, rehearsed performances, and prepared speeches designed not just to entertain, but to challenge perceptions and inspire empathy. There was excitement in the air, but also an undercurrent of tension. Change always invites resistance. On the morning of the assembly, Trinity felt a familiar swirl of nerves and determination. Standing in the wings of the auditorium, she glanced at the crowd gathering in the seats. Students who just weeks ago had barely spoken to one another were now sitting side by side. The presence of parents, teachers, and even community leaders underscored the significance of the moment. Camden approached her quietly, his usual confident swagger softened by a more reflective demeanor. "Nervous?" he asked. She shook her head. "Excited and hopeful." "Me too," he said before adding softly, "I'm sorry for everything before." Trinity nodded, appreciating the sincerity in his voice. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was necessary. The assembly began with a video montage, a powerful collection of clips and images highlighting stories from students affected by bullying and isolation. As the screen flickered with faces and voices, the audience was drawn into the shared pain and courage of their peers. When the lights came back up, the stage was set for Trinity's speech. She stepped forward, heart pounding but voice steady. "Good morning, everyone," she began. "A few months ago, Roosevelt High was divided by fear and silence. Many of us felt alone, unseen, or misunderstood. But today, we stand together to say that no one here has to walk that path by themselves." Her words echoed through the auditorium, cutting through years of unspoken hurts. "We started something small, just a few conversations, a few brave voices willing to say, 'Enough.' But those ripples have grown. We've learned that real strength isn't about tearing others down. It's about lifting each other up." She paused, scanning the faces before her. Some smiled, others wiped away tears. Change isn't easy. It takes courage. It takes listening. It takes humility. But if we keep pushing, if we keep believing, Roosevelt High can become a place where everyone belongs. The applause was spontaneous and heartfelt, a wave of sound that seemed to carry away old divisions. Next came performances, spoken word, music, dance, each piece reflecting themes of resilience, unity, and hope. The energy in the room was electric. Even teachers found themselves moved to tears. Behind the scenes, Trinity noticed Camden preparing for his own moment on stage. He was to share his story, the mistakes he'd made, the lessons he'd learned, and his commitment to making amends. When Camden spoke, his voice trembled at first. He spoke of the fear that had driven his actions, the loneliness he'd tried to mask with aggression, and the overwhelming relief he felt in finding acceptance. "I'm not perfect," he admitted, "but I want to be better. For myself, for Trinity, and for all of us who deserve to be treated with respect." His words landed like a powerful confession, breaking through barriers of pride and resentment. As the assembly drew to a close, the principal stepped forward to announce new school policies, reinforcing anti-bullying measures, support groups, and a dedicated peer mentorship program. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, not just for the event itself, but for the promise of a new beginning. In the days that followed, the impact was tangible. Conversations in hallways became more genuine. Acts of kindness multiplied. Students reached out to those they'd once ignored. Trinity's phone buzzed, constantly with messages of encouragement and requests for advice. The ripple effect was no longer just a club, it was a movement. But amidst the triumph, Trinity remained grounded. She knew the road ahead was long, filled with challenges and setbacks. Old habits die hard, and not everyone would embrace change so willingly. Still, the turning point had been reached. The walls that once divided Roosevelt High were crumbling, brick by brick, and with each brick that fell, a new space was created. A space for understanding, growth, and the promise of a better tomorrow. After the momentum gained at the spring assembly, Roosevelt High seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The halls were warmer, the cliques less rigid, and the sense of isolation that had plagued so many began to ebb. But change, as Trinity had come to understand, wasn't a straight path. It was a constant negotiation between progress and resistance, hope and doubt. The day after the assembly, Trinity walked into school feeling lighter than she had in months. The ripple effect had grown, both in numbers and influence. Students who once turned their backs were now approaching her with questions, ideas, even apologies. The ripple was spreading, but beneath that surface calm, the currents were still shifting. During lunch in the cafeteria, Trinity noticed a group gathered near the far corner, the usual suspects, the students who thrived on maintaining the old order of fear and exclusion. Camden wasn't with them anymore, but his past lingered in their smirks and whispered remarks. She sat with her friends, keeping an ear out for any signs of trouble. And trouble found her. A student named Marcus, known for his sharp tongue and quick temper, stood up from the group and crossed over. His eyes locked on Trinity, his expression a mixture of challenge and something less obvious, maybe curiosity, maybe uncertainty. "You really think you're changing this place?" Marcus asked, voice low but edged with hostility. "You," Think a few speeches and a few workshops can fix years of crap? Trinity met his gaze steadily. It's not about quick fixes. It's about starting something real, something that lasts. He snorted. Lasts? Like how long? Until the next fight? Until someone else gets bullied? I don't know how long it will take, she admitted, but I'm willing to try, and I'm not alone. Marcus shook his head and turned back to his group, but the encounter left a lingering tension. Change was stirring up old fears and resistance. The ghosts of the past weren't ready to disappear quietly. Later that day, during a ripple effect meeting, Trinity brought up the encounter. Resistance is natural, she told the group. We expected some pushback, but we can't let it derail us. One of the new members, a shy girl named Lisa, spoke up. What if people like Marcus never change? What if they just get angrier? Trinity nodded thoughtfully. That's why we have to keep listening, keep building bridges. It's not about defeating anyone, it's about finding common ground. The room was quiet, absorbing the weight of her words. Change wasn't just external, but it was internal too. Every student at Roosevelt High was wrestling with their own fears, biases, and past hurts. That week brought another challenge. A heated debate erupted over a proposed mural on the school's main wall, designed to celebrate diversity and unity. Some students embraced the idea, eager to see their stories represented. Others, however, saw it as divisive or unnecessary. The mural project became a microcosm of the larger struggle. Trinity found herself mediating heated discussions, trying to keep the focus on inclusion and respect. It was exhausting, but vital. In the midst of this, Camden reached out to Trinity privately. I want to help, he said, more sincere than ever. I want to be part of the solution, not the problem. Together, they organized a panel discussion inviting students, teachers, and even parents to talk openly about what Roosevelt High meant to them and how to make it a better place. The night of the panel, the school auditorium was packed. Voices were raised, stories shared, emotions raw but honest. For every skeptical comment, there was a hopeful response. For every challenge, an offer of understanding. As the evening wore on, Trinity realized that transformation wasn't just about changing others. It was about changing herself, her own assumptions, her patience, her willingness to confront discomfort. One moment stood out. A student named Javier, known for keeping to himself, stood and shared his experience of feeling invisible, overlooked by both peers and teachers. His voice cracked as he spoke, but he found strength in the room's attentive silence. That's what this is about, Trinity whispered to Camden, making the invisible visible. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the school culture shifted. The ripple effect grew stronger, its members more confident. New friendships blossomed across old divides. The mural, once a source of contention, became a symbol of hope as students worked together to bring it to life. But Trinity knew this was only the beginning. The hardest work lay ahead, sustaining change when the initial excitement faded, confronting the harder questions of identity, power, and belonging. At night, she often reflected on her journey, the pain, the victories, the setbacks. Change was messy, unpredictable, and sometimes frightening, but it was also necessary, and it was worth fighting for. With each day, Trinity felt herself growing, learning to lead not just with passion, but with empathy and resilience. Roosevelt High was becoming more than just a school. It was becoming a community. And in that community, every voice mattered. The calm that had begun to settle over Roosevelt High was fragile. For every step forward, there lingered echoes of old wounds, pain that hadn't yet healed, fears too deep to simply forget. Trinity knew the journey toward true change demanded more than unity and hope. It required confronting the shadows buried beneath the surface. It started with an unexpected message. One afternoon, as Trinity sat in the library working on Ripple, the effect plans, her phone buzzed. The name flashing on the screen made her pause. Madeline. Madeline was someone Trinity hadn't heard from in years, someone she thought she'd left behind. Curious and cautious, Trinity answered, "Hey, Madeline." There was a long pause before the voice came through, quieter than she remembered, but unmistakably the same. "Trinity, I need to talk. Can we meet? Memories flooded back. The fights, the misunderstandings, the sharp words exchanged in the halls that had driven them apart. But beneath it all there had been friendship once, fragile and fading yet real. They agreed to meet at a nearby coffee shop after school. When Trinity arrived, Madeline was already there, nervously stirring her drink. "I'm sorry for how things ended," Madeline began, voice trembling. "Back then I was angry, scared. I pushed people away, especially you." Trinity nodded, feeling a knot in her chest loosen just a little. "I know. We were both hurting." Madeline looked up, her eyes searching. "I've been watching what you're doing with the ripple effect. I want to be part of it. I want to make things right." The weight of those words settled between them, heavy but hopeful. It wasn't just about forgiveness. It was about acknowledging the past, the mistakes, the pain, the ways they'd both been shaped by it. Back at school, Trinity shared the encounter with the Ripple Effect members. "Healing means facing the past," she told them. "It's not easy, but it's necessary if we want to build something lasting." Inspired, the group decided to organize a Truth and Reconciliation Day, a space where students could share their stories, their regrets, and their hopes without judgment. The idea was met with mixed reactions. Some students were eager, others wary, afraid of reopening old wounds. The day arrived and the auditorium filled with a tense energy. One by one, students stepped forward to speak. Some shared stories of bullying, exclusion, and loneliness. Others confessed their own moments of cruelty or silence. When it was Trinity's turn, she spoke with quiet strength. She told of her own struggles, feeling invisible, the loneliness and the hope that drove her to start the ripple effect. As the stories poured out, walls began to crumble. Empathy grew in unexpected places. Students who had once stood on opposite sides found common ground in shared pain and the desire to change. Among the voices was Camden's, who spoke openly about his past mistakes and his commitment to being better. His words surprised many, showing a vulnerability few had seen before. But the day wasn't without conflict. A few students reacted with anger, refusing to participate, insisting the past was the past. They saw the event as weakness or distraction. Trinity understood their resistance. Change forced confrontation with uncomfortable truths. It demanded courage not just to speak, but to listen and forgive. After the event, the Ripple Effect held a reflection meeting. "This is just the beginning," Trinity reminded the group. "Healing takes time. We have to be patient with others and ourselves." Madeline had become a steady presence in the group, her past pain now a source of motivation. Together, they worked to create peer support programs, counseling opportunities and awareness campaigns. The school counselor, Ms. Hayes, who had quietly supported the Ripple Effect from the start, praised their efforts. "You're creating a culture where healing is possible. That's rare." But even as progress unfolded, Trinity wrestled with her own past shadows. Old doubts crept in during quiet moments, fears that the change was superficial, that the wounds were too deep. One evening she sat alone in the empty auditorium, the voices of the day still echoing in her mind. She thought about the students who hadn't come forward, those who still felt trapped in silence. Her phone buzzed again, a message from her mother. "Proud of you, honey. Keep shining your light." That simple reminder grounded her. Change might be slow and painful, but every step forward was worth it. The ripple was becoming a wave, and it was far from over. The peaceful progress the Ripple Effect had worked so hard to cultivate at Roosevelt High was beginning to show signs of strain. The atmosphere had shifted. Beneath the surface, old rivalries and resentments were stirring. Change was never easy, and the deeper the movement dug, the more resistance it seemed to encounter. It started with small incidents. Graffiti appeared on bathroom walls. Hateful messages aimed at the very students the Ripple Effect sought to protect. Rumors spread rapidly through the halls, fanned by whispered conversations and social media posts. Divisions once thought to be healing were now simmering beneath a fragile calm. Trinity and the Ripple Effect members noticed the change immediately. At their weekly meetings, the energy was different, more cautious, less hopeful. Some students expressed fear, others frustration. The message was clear. Not everyone was ready to let go of the past or embrace the new culture of empathy. Trinity understood that tension was a natural part of transformation, but it was painful nonetheless. "We have to be stronger than ever," she told her team. "This is when we prove what the ripple effect really means." One afternoon, Trinity met with Principal Owens to discuss the escalating unrest. The principal's face was tight with concern. "We've never seen this level of division before," Owens said quietly. "It's threatening the safety of the school." Together, they devised a plan to increase supervision in hotspots around the campus and to hold additional dialogue sessions. Owens hoped that by creating more opportunities for students to talk honestly, they could diffuse tensions before they exploded. The ripple effect took on the challenge with determination. They organized workshops and forums where students from different backgrounds could share their experiences. The goal was to foster understanding and prevent misunderstandings from turning into conflict. However, not all efforts were met with openness. At one such forum, a heated argument broke out between two groups. Longtime rivals who couldn't see past their grievances. Voices rose, accusations flew, and the room's fragile peace shattered. Trinity stepped in, raising her voice to calm the crowd. "We're here to listen, not to fight," she said firmly. "If we don't hear each other, nothing will change." The confrontation was a harsh reminder that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but it also reinforced the necessity of their work. Change demanded patience and resilience. Outside the walls of Roosevelt High, the tension was echoed in the community. Parents and local leaders watched the unfolding drama with growing anxiety. Some questioned the ripple effect's approach, fearing it made students vulnerable or distracted from academics. Trinity found herself in the spotlight more than ever. She was invited to community meetings and local radio shows to explain the movement's purpose. She spoke passionately about the power of empathy and the need to confront uncomfortable truths. But the backlash was real. Anonymous threats appeared on social media, warning her to stop stirring trouble. The pressure weighed heavily, yet she refused to back down. In moments of doubt, Trinity leaned on her friends in the ripple effect. Their shared commitment and support reminded her that they were not alone. One evening, as they gathered in the school library, Madeline shared a story from her own past, a time when she faced similar opposition in a previous school. Her experience gave the group renewed strength. "We've faced darkness before," Madeline said, "and we can overcome it again." Meanwhile, Camden took on a new role, reaching out to students who felt marginalized or angry. His efforts to bridge divides sometimes put him in difficult situations, but his sincerity won respect. The school, Counselor Ms. Hayes, worked closely with the ripple effect to provide mental health resources, knowing that healing emotional wounds was critical to lasting peace. Despite the setbacks, signs of hope persisted. A group of students who once refused to speak to each other began collaborating on a mural symbolizing unity. Their artwork became a powerful symbol of what was possible. Trinity watched the progress with cautious optimism. The movement was growing stronger, but so was the resistance. The stakes were higher than ever. As the chapter closed, a new challenge loomed on the horizon, one that would test the ripple effect's resolve like never before. The movement that had brought Roosevelt High together was about to face its greatest trial. The tension that had quietly simmered beneath the surface of Roosevelt High had finally reached a boiling point. What began as whispered rumors and minor incidents exploded into an unavoidable crisis, one that threatened to undo all the progress the ripple effect had made. For Trinity and her team, it was the ultimate test of their mission and their resolve. It started on a crisp autumn morning. The air was thick with anticipation, the usual chatter in the hallways subdued by an undercurrent of unease. Trinity noticed the change immediately as she walked through the crowded corridors. Groups huddled in tight circles, their faces tense, eyes darting with suspicion or anger. The familiar sense of community was fraying. Word spread quickly. A fight had broken out near the cafeteria, and it wasn't just any fight. This was a clash between factions that had long been at odds, but until now had been kept under control by the ripple effect's influence. Now barriers had shattered. Trinity's phone buzzed with a flurry of messages from her teammates and concerned students. The news was bad. Several students were injured, police were being called, and the school's reputation was on the line. Principal Owens immediately convened an emergency meeting. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was heavy. Owens's face bore the weight of the crisis, but there was no room for despair. "We need to act fast," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "This incident could undo everything we've worked for." Trinity stepped forward, her heart pounding. "We can't let fear win. This is the moment we show what the ripple effect truly stands for. Healing, not hatred." The team sprang into action. They coordinated with teachers and counselors to address the immediate aftermath and planned a school-wide assembly to confront the issues head-on. Trinity's voice became the rallying cry for calm and unity, but the damage was deep. The media caught wind of the fight and descended on Roosevelt High with cameras and microphones, eager to capture the turmoil. Headlines questioned the effectiveness of the ripple effect, painting it as naive and idealistic in the face of real-world violence. The backlash was swift and brutal. Some parents demanded the program be shut down. Others called for stricter security measures and zero-tolerance policies. The school board convened emergency sessions, weighing the future of the movement. Trinity found herself under intense scrutiny. The spotlight was no longer just local. It had turned national, with pundits and commentators debating the causes and solutions. Some praised the ripple effect's intentions, while others condemned it as reckless. Through it all, Trinity refused to back down. She knew that fear and anger thrived on division, and that the only way forward was through honest conversation and accountability. She arranged for mediation sessions between the students involved in the fight, pushing for dialogue over punishment. These sessions were difficult and emotional. Students aired grievances that had been festering for years, stories of exclusion, bullying, and pain. Tears and raised voices often filled the room, but slowly walls began to come down. One young man, Marcus, spoke with surprising honesty about feeling invisible and unheard. "I didn't want to fight," he admitted, but nobody listened until things got ugly. His confession resonated with many. It became clear that the fight was not just about the momentary clash, but about deeper wounds the school community had ignored for too long. Meanwhile, Trinity worked tirelessly to engage the wider student body. She organized workshops on conflict resolution, empathy training, and restorative justice. The ripple effect's message shifted from just spreading kindness to actively healing harm. Outside school, community leaders stepped in to support the effort. Local churches, non-profits, and mental health organizations offered resources and spaces for healing. The crisis had galvanized a broader coalition committed to lasting change. Still, resistance remained. Some students and parents felt that the new approach was too soft, that discipline needed to be harsh to maintain order. These debates played out in heated school board meetings and public forums. Trinity listened to all voices, striving to find common ground. She believed that true safety came not from fear or punishment, but from understanding and inclusion. It was a delicate balance to maintain. Amid the turmoil, a quiet breakthrough occurred. A group of students who had once been leaders of opposing factions came together to create a new student council committee focused on diversity and inclusion. Their collaboration sent a powerful message that reconciliation was possible. Trinity attended their first meeting filled with cautious hope. She saw firsthand how dialogue and empathy could transform even the deepest divides. As the weeks passed, Roosevelt High slowly began to heal. The scars from the fight remained, but so did the new bonds forged in the crucible of crisis. The ripple effect emerged not unscathed, but stronger and more resilient. The experience reshaped the movement's vision. It was no longer just about spreading kindness. It was about facing the hard truths and working through them, together. Trinity stood before the school at the next assembly, her voice steady and clear. "We have faced our darkest moment," she said, "but it is also the moment we choose, who we want to be. We choose to rise above fear, to listen, to understand, and to grow." The room erupted in applause, a testament to the power of perseverance and hope. Yet, as the chapter closed, Trinity knew this was only the beginning. The work ahead would be harder and longer, but the ripple effect had proven it could survive the storm. Now it was time to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and united. The storm had passed, but the air at Roosevelt High still carried a tension, a mixture of relief and cautious hope. After the recent crisis, everyone understood that nothing would ever be quite the same. The ripple effect, once a hopeful experiment in kindness and community, had matured into something far more complex and resilient. Trinity stood at the heart of this transformation, the steady force driving the school toward healing. In the days following the assembly, the school buzzed with new energy. Teachers noticed students lingering in groups, talking openly rather, then retreating into silence. The corridors, once fraught with suspicion, began to hum with cautious camaraderie. Students who had barely spoken to each other now shared tentative smiles and conversations. The Student Council Committee on Diversity and Inclusion, formed in the aftermath of the fight, became a beacon of this new spirit. Their first official event was a forum titled Voices Heard, Voices Respected, designed to create an open platform for honest dialogue among the student body. Trinity helped facilitate, but she made sure the students took the lead, empowering them to own the process. The forum opened with a simple but powerful message. Everyone had a story worth listening to, and every voice mattered. One by one, students stepped forward to share their experiences, from feelings of alienation to moments of unexpected kindness. The atmosphere was electric with vulnerability and courage. Marcus, the young man whose confession had broken the ice during mediation sessions, spoke again. This time his voice was stronger, filled with newfound confidence. "We're not just students," he said. "We're a community. We can't fix the past overnight, but we can decide how to shape our future, together." His words struck a chord. More students joined in, discussing tough topics like racial tension, bullying, mental health struggles, and the pressure to conform. The forum was not a place for easy answers, but for real conversations, messy and raw. Meanwhile, the ripple effect's influence spread beyond Roosevelt High. Local media began to shift their tone, recognizing the school's courageous steps toward genuine change. Community organizations deepened their partnerships, offering workshops, mentoring programs, and counseling services tailored to the school's evolving needs. Trinity found herself navigating a new role, not just as a leader of a movement, but as a bridge between the school families and the wider community. She spent evenings meeting with parents, listening to their concerns and hopes. Some were skeptical, wary that their children were exposed to too much conflict. Others were grateful for the openness and progress. One particularly memorable meeting brought together a group of parents from diverse backgrounds. They shared stories of their children's struggles with identity, acceptance, and belonging. The room was filled with empathy and tears, but also determination. "Change starts with us," Trinity said softly. "We have to model the respect and understanding we want to see in our children." This shift was not lost on the faculty. Teachers reported seeing students more engaged and supportive of each other. Classrooms became spaces for difficult but necessary conversations about privilege, justice, and empathy. The curriculum adapted, incorporating lessons that reflected the students' real-world experiences. Of course, challenges persisted. Some students still clung to old divisions, reluctant or afraid to change. Discipline issues did not vanish overnight, but the school community was learning to face these challenges not with punishment alone, but with compassion and accountability. Trinity's own journey deepened. The fight and its aftermath forced her to confront her limits and fears. There were moments when she doubted whether she was strong enough to carry the burden, but each setback only reinforced her commitment. One quiet evening, sitting alone in the empty auditorium after a long day, Trinity reflected on how far they had come. The ripple effect was no longer just a program or slogan. It was a living, breathing force shaped by the hopes, struggles, and courage of every student and staff member. She thought about the students who had suffered most, the ones whose pain had sparked the crisis, but who now stood ready to lead the healing. Their bravery was a reminder that real change demanded risk, honesty, and persistence. In the weeks that followed, Roosevelt High launched a series of new initiatives. Peer mentoring programs connected younger students with older ones who had faced similar struggles. Mental health resources were expanded and destigmatized through school-wide campaigns. Art and music projects offered creative outlets for expression and connection. The school's annual talent show, once a routine event, transformed into a celebration of diversity and resilience. Students performed songs, spoken word poetry, and dance routines that reflected their personal journeys. The audience was moved, many wiping away tears as they witnessed the power of shared stories. At the heart of these changes was a growing sense of ownership and pride among the students. They no longer saw themselves merely as victims or bystanders, but as active architects of their school's culture. This shift was perhaps the ripple effect's greatest triumph. One afternoon, Trinity received an unexpected invitation. The school board wanted to feature Roosevelt High's transformation as a model for other districts struggling with similar challenges. They asked her to speak at a statewide education conference. Standing at the podium in a packed auditorium, Trinity spoke from the heart. She shared the story of the ripple effect, the successes, the setbacks, and the unflinching commitment to listen and grow. Her words resonated far beyond Roosevelt High, inspiring educators, administrators, and students alike. Change is not easy, she told the audience. It requires courage to face our imperfections and humility to learn from each other. But when we commit to seeing each other as whole people, with fears, hopes, and dreams, we begin to build communities that heal, not just survive. The applause was thunderous. Trinity's message was clear. The ripple effect was no longer just a local movement. It was a call to action for schools everywhere. Back at Roosevelt High, the school year drew to a close with a renewed sense of possibility. The journey had been painful and unpredictable, but it had planted seeds of hope that would continue to grow. On the last day, Trinity stood by the flagpole, watching students say their goodbyes and make plans for the summer. She felt a profound sense of gratitude. They had weathered the storm together, and in doing so had discovered something more powerful than any challenge, the strength of community and the promise of new beginnings. As she walked away, she knew the ripple effect was far from over. It was a living movement, one that would continue to ripple outward, touching lives, bridging divides, and shaping a better future, one act of kindness at a time. The summer sun was bright, but tempered by a cool breeze, carrying with it the scent of fresh possibilities. Roosevelt High was quiet, its halls empty except for the occasional custodian or teacher prepping for the next school year. Yet beneath the stillness, a sense of anticipation pulsed in the air, the promise of transformation not yet complete, but unfolding with quiet determination. Trinity found herself standing at the crossroads of what had been and what was to come. The past year had tested every ounce of her resilience, every belief she held about leadership, community, and change. The ripple effect had blossomed into a movement far beyond her original vision, challenging old systems and inspiring new ways of thinking. But this was just the beginning. She spent the early mornings in the school's garden, a peaceful sanctuary where students had planted flowers, herbs, and vegetables as part of a new environmental club. The garden was more than just a patch of green. It was a metaphor for growth, patience, and care. Watching seedlings push through the soil, Trinity reflected on the journey ahead. Plans for the upcoming year were already taking shape. The student council, energized and empowered, drafted proposals to expand mental health services, introduce restorative justice practices, and create more inclusive extracurricular activities. Trinity worked alongside counselors, teachers, and parents to secure funding and community partnerships. One particularly exciting initiative was the launch of a mentorship program connecting Roosevelt High students with alumni who had navigated similar struggles. These mentors, many of whom had gone on to college or careers in social work, education, and activism, would serve as role models and guides. As Trinity prepared for a meeting with the school board, She reviewed data and testimonies collected over the year. Graduation rates were rising, incidents of bullying had decreased, and student surveys showed improved feelings of safety and belonging. Yet, there was still work to do. The boardroom was filled with familiar faces, educators, administrators, parents, and community leaders. Trinity spoke confidently about the ripple effect's impact and the next steps to sustain momentum. Questions arose about scalability and long-term support, but Trinity's clear vision and passion helped sway even the most skeptical. Outside the formal meetings, Trinity continued her personal growth. She sought out workshops on trauma-informed education, conflict resolution, and leadership. She read extensively, diving into research on social justice and adolescent psychology. She also made time for self-care, long runs through the nearby park, journaling, and quiet evenings with close friends. One of the most meaningful experiences came when Trinity was invited to attend a regional youth leadership summit. There, she connected with peers from other schools who were also working to transform their communities. Sharing stories and strategies fueled her resolve. She realized that Roosevelt High was part of a larger movement, a network of young leaders, determined to reshape the future. Back home, Trinity's relationship with her family deepened. They saw the toll her responsibilities sometimes took, but also celebrated her victories. Her younger sister, inspired by Trinity's dedication, began volunteering at a local youth center. Her parents, once unsure about the changes, now proudly supported her vision. As the new school year approached, excitement and nerves mingled. Trinity met with the principal and staff to review safety protocols, curricular updates, and new programs. The administration's commitment was stronger than ever, and teachers reported feeling more equipped to handle sensitive topics and support diverse learners. Trinity also prepared to welcome the incoming freshman class. She planned orientation, events focused on community building and empathy, designed to set a tone of respect and inclusion from day one. She hoped these efforts would prevent the fractures that had once threatened to unravel the school. Among the incoming students was a young girl named Maya, quiet and observant, carrying the weight of her own challenges. Trinity remembered what it was like to be the new kid, feeling invisible and unsure. She made a point to introduce herself and offer encouragement, hoping to make a difference in Maya's first days. The first day of school arrived with bright sunshine and a palpable buzz. Students filled the hallways, exchanging stories from summer and dreaming about what lay ahead. The air was thick with possibility, a chance to rewrite old narratives and build a stronger, kinder community. Throughout the day, Trinity moved through the crowds, greeting friends and newcomers alike. She noticed how the changes were already taking root. Groups mixing more freely, smiles exchanged across previous divides, a growing culture of openness. In the weeks that followed, challenges inevitably arose, conflicts, misunderstandings, moments of frustration. But the foundation laid over the past year provided tools and structures to address these moments constructively. Peer mediators stepped in to facilitate dialogue, teachers reinforced inclusive language, and students took active roles in fostering kindness. Trinity often found herself reflecting on the lessons learned. Change was not linear or easy, but it was real and ongoing. The ripple effect was a testament to what could happen when people chose empathy over judgment, action over apathy. 1. Afternoon. As the sun dipped low, Trinity sat with Maya on a bench outside the school. Maya shared her fears about fitting in and her dreams of becoming an artist. Trinity listened, offering reassurance and the promise of support. "Your story matters," Trinity said softly. "And here, you'll find people who want to help you. Tell it." Maya smiled, a light kindling in her eyes. Looking ahead, Trinity knew the road would still have obstacles, but she also knew that Roosevelt High had become a place where hope could thrive, a place where every student had a chance to grow, to be seen, and to make a difference. The future was unfolding, one step at a time, shaped by courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that together they could build a better world. The new school year was well underway, and Roosevelt High had transformed into a vibrant hub of energy and innovation. The changes initiated the previous year were no longer experimental. They had become part of the school's identity. Hallways buzzed with a renewed sense of purpose, and the student body was more engaged than ever. Trinity, now a recognized leader, felt the weight and thrill of her evolving role as a catalyst for change. Every morning she arrived early, greeting students with a warm smile, fostering connections that made even the most reserved feel welcome. The ripple effect, once a fledgling initiative, had grown into a comprehensive program that touched nearly every aspect of school life, from academics to mental health support, from community outreach to environmental activism. The mentorship program had flourished, with alumni regularly returning to offer guidance and hope. Trinity's days were filled with meetings, planning sessions, and one-on-one conversations, but she was careful to balance leadership with listening, knowing that true change required humility and openness. She held regular forums where students could voice concerns and propose ideas, ensuring that every voice mattered. One of the most exciting developments was the launch of Roosevelt High's first-ever Innovation Lab, a space dedicated to creative projects, technology, and social entrepreneurship. Funded through a mix of grants and local sponsorships, the lab was a testament to what the community could achieve when united by a common vision. Students were encouraged to dream big, whether it was designing sustainable products, developing apps to support mental health, or organizing community events. Trinity worked closely with the lab's coordinator, Ms. Jenkins, a passionate educator with a background in STEM and youth development. Together, they curated workshops and guest speaker series, exposing students to real-world challenges and solutions. The energy was contagious. Even those who once doubted the potential for change found themselves inspired by the possibilities. Despite the progress, Trinity remained grounded. She understood that transformation was ongoing and that setbacks were inevitable. Some students struggled to adapt to the new culture, feeling left behind or uncertain. Trinity made it a priority to reach out to those individuals, often spending late afternoons offering support and encouragement. Her empathy stemmed not only from her own experiences, but from a deep conviction that every person deserved a chance to thrive. She believed that schools were more than places of academic learning. They were communities where young people could discover their strengths, confront their challenges, and build resilience. Outside school, Trinity's influence extended into the wider community. She collaborated with local organizations to address issues such as homelessness, food insecurity, and youth violence. Together, they organized volunteer days, awareness, campaigns, and fundraisers, engaging students in meaningful service. These efforts reinforced the idea that Roosevelt High was not isolated, but intricately connected to the city's fabric. One memorable event was the annual Day of Service, which brought together hundreds of students, teachers, families, and neighbors. Armed with gloves, paintbrushes, and determination, they cleaned parks, renovated community centers, and delivered care packages to those in need. The day was more than a cleanup. It was a celebration of solidarity and shared responsibility. Through it all, Trinity's personal growth mirrored the school's evolution. She developed greater confidence and clarity about her goals and values. Her speeches were no longer tentative, but passionate calls to action. Her ability to inspire others was recognized beyond Roosevelt High, with invitations to speak at conferences and youth summits. Yet despite the accolades, Trinity remained humble. She credited the community's collective effort and the power of collaboration. She knew that leadership was not about individual glory, but about lifting others up and creating spaces where everyone could contribute. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Trinity sat with her closest friends, reflecting on the journey. They laughed, shared stories, and dreamed aloud about what the future might hold. The obstacles they had faced only strengthened their resolve. As graduation approached, plans were underway to celebrate not just academic achievement, but the growth of character and community spirit. Trinity was chosen to deliver the commencement address, a moment she approached with a mix of pride and solemn responsibility. She wanted her words to honor the struggles and triumphs of her classmates and to inspire the next generation to continue the work. In her speech, Trinity spoke about the power of empathy, resilience, and unity. She challenged her peers to be agents of change in their communities, to stand up against injustice, and to embrace diversity as a strength. Her message resonated deeply, drawing standing ovations and heartfelt applause. After the ceremony, as caps flew into the air and celebrations erupted, Trinity felt a profound sense of fulfillment. This was not an end but a beginning, a launchpad for new adventures and continued advocacy. Looking ahead, Trinity planned to attend university, eager to expand her knowledge and network. She aimed to study social work and public policy, fields that aligned with her passion for systemic change. She knew the road ahead would be demanding, but she was ready. Her story, once marked by struggle and uncertainty, had blossomed into a beacon of hope. Through perseverance, collaboration, and an unwavering belief in the power of community, Trinity had helped transform Roosevelt High, and in doing so, had redefined her own future. The horizon was wide and filled with promise, and Trinity was poised to embrace it fully, carrying forward the ripple effect with courage and conviction. The months following graduation brought new challenges and opportunities as Trinity stepped into the wider world beyond Roosevelt High. Transitioning from a familiar environment to the vastness of university life was daunting, but she approached it with the same determination and optimism that had fueled her during high school. Her acceptance to a prestigious state university was a victory not just for her, but for the entire community that had supported her journey. She carried with her the lessons learned, the friendships forged, and the spirit of the ripple effect that had transformed Roosevelt into a beacon of hope. University was unlike anything Trinity had experienced before. The campus was sprawling, the student body diverse, and the academic expectations intense. Yet rather than shrinking back, she embraced the challenge. She enrolled in courses on social work, public policy, and community organizing, each class, deepening her understanding of the systems she wished to change. Professors recognized her passion and drive, often inviting her to participate in research projects and community initiatives. Her presence on campus quickly became known. Trinity didn't just attend classes, she got involved. She joined student, government, advocacy groups, and volunteer organizations. It was here that the ripple effect took on a new dimension, expanding from a high school initiative into a broader movement aimed at tackling systemic issues on a citywide and eventually statewide scale. Trinity organized workshops to educate fellow students about the power of grassroots activism. She shared stories from Roosevelt High, highlighting how small, coordinated efforts could spark meaningful change. These sessions drew large crowds, sparking interest among students from all backgrounds and majors. It became clear that the desire to make a difference was universal, transcending age, race, and discipline. Collaboration became a cornerstone of Trinity's approach. She worked with student leaders from different cultural organizations to promote inclusivity and equity. Together, they launched campaigns addressing mental health stigma, racial justice, and environmental sustainability. The university campus, once fragmented into cliques and silos, began to feel like a more unified and supportive community. At the same time, Trinity maintained close ties with Roosevelt High. She coordinated mentorship programs linking university students with high schoolers, creating pipelines for knowledge, resources, and encouragement. Through video calls and occasional visits, she stayed connected to the people and places that had shaped her. Her role as a bridge between generations became a vital thread in the expanding ripple effect. However, the path was not without obstacles. The scale of university bureaucracy was intimidating, and funding for grassroots initiatives was always a challenge. Trinity learned to navigate complex administrative systems, draft grant proposals, and advocate persuasively for resources. She faced skepticism from some who doubted the impact young people could have on entrenched problems. But each setback strengthened her resolve. One pivotal moment came when Trinity was invited to speak at a statewide youth leadership conference. Standing before hundreds of young activists, she recounted the story of Roosevelt High's transformation and the ripple that had grown beyond its walls. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring many to start similar projects in their own communities. The conference opened doors, connecting Trinity with mentors, policymakers, and potential collaborators who would prove invaluable in the years to come. Balancing academics, activism, and personal growth demanded much of Trinity. There were moments of exhaustion and self-doubt, but she leaned on her close friends and family for support. They reminded her of how far she had come and the importance of self-care in sustaining long-term efforts. Trinity also discovered the value of reflection and mindfulness, practices she incorporated into her daily routine to maintain clarity and focus. Throughout this period, Trinity's worldview broadened. She witnessed firsthand the complexities of social issues, how poverty, education, health, and justice intertwined in ways that defied simple solutions, yet she remained committed to the belief that change was possible, especially when driven by compassion and community engagement. The ripple effect was no longer just a program, it was a philosophy guiding every decision and action. Trinity realized that transformation required patience, persistence, and the willingness to learn from mistakes. She understood that leadership was about empowering others to take initiative and create their own ripples. As her second year at university neared its end, Trinity reflected on the journey. The excitement of new beginnings had given way to a deeper appreciation of the ongoing work ahead. She had grown not only as an activist, but as a person, embracing complexity and nuance without losing sight of hope. Plans were underway for a large-scale community summit to be held in collaboration with local organizations and university departments. The goal was to bring together diverse stakeholders, students, educators, policymakers, and residents, to share experiences, identify challenges, and strategize solutions. Trinity saw this as an opportunity to institutionalize the ripple effects principles on a broader platform. Looking forward, Trinity envisioned a future where education was not confined to classrooms, but was a vibrant, participatory process that empowered youth to shape their destinies. She dreamed of replicating the Roosevelt model in other schools and communities, adapting it to different contexts while preserving its core values. Her story had come full circle, from a high school student uncertain of her place to a confident young leader, ready to inspire change on a larger scale. The ripples she had set in motion continued to expand, touching lives in ways she had only begun to imagine. The journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. As Trinity moved deeper into her university experience, she realized that the challenges facing communities like Roosevelt High were mirrored on a much grander scale, across cities, states, and even countries. The issues of inequality, disenfranchisement, and limited access to opportunity were not confined to her hometown. This realization fueled a new ambition within her, to extend the ripple effect beyond local boundaries and create a network of empowered youth activists nationwide. Her vision took shape during a national conference on youth leadership and social innovation. Surrounded by passionate young leaders from diverse backgrounds, Trinity felt both inspired and humbled. The stories shared were different, but the core struggles were the same: fighting systemic barriers, finding a voice in decision-making, and creating spaces where marginalized youth could thrive. The conference became a turning point, expanding her understanding of what was possible through collective action. Back on campus, Trinity began reaching out to student groups, non-profit organizations, and community leaders beyond her university. She coordinated virtual meetings and brainstorming sessions to share the ripple effect model and explore ways to adapt it to various settings. Technology played a critical role. Social media platforms, video conferencing, and collaborative tools allowed connections that would have been impossible a decade earlier. Trinity spearheaded the creation of an online hub, a digital community where young activists could exchange resources, stories, and strategies. The hub quickly grew, attracting hundreds of members from across the country. It became a vibrant space for peer support and innovation, hosting webinars, workshops, and challenges designed to mobilize youth around pressing social issues. The ripple effect was evolving into a movement fueled by decentralized leadership and shared purpose. Despite the rapid growth, Trinity remained mindful of the importance of local context. She advocated for a flexible framework that respected the unique histories, cultures, and needs of different communities. The goal was not to impose a one-size-fits-all solution, but to empower young people to tailor the ripple effect principles to their realities, fostering genuine ownership and sustainability. Funding and logistics presented ongoing hurdles. Scaling. A grassroots movement demanded resources, financial, human, and technical. Trinity learned to navigate grant applications, partnerships with foundations, and collaborations with universities and civic institutions. She became adept at storytelling, framing the ripple effect's impact in compelling ways to attract support. It was a steep learning curve, but one she embraced with determination. The expansion also brought new challenges in leadership. As the network grew, coordinating efforts across time zones, cultures, and priorities required sophisticated communication and conflict resolution skills. Trinity focused on building a diverse leadership team that reflected the communities they served. She emphasized inclusivity, transparency, and accountability as guiding principles, fostering a culture where every voice mattered. One of the most rewarding moments came when Trinity visited a school in a different state that had adopted the ripple effect framework. She witnessed students leading peer mediation programs, environmental initiatives, and civic engagement projects. Their enthusiasm and sense of agency echoed what she had seen years earlier at Roosevelt High. It was proof that the ripple could indeed travel far and wide. At the same time, Trinity confronted the emotional toll of such expansive work. The weight of responsibility, the setbacks, and the slow pace of systemic change sometimes felt overwhelming. She leaned heavily on her mentors and friends, who reminded her to celebrate small victories and practice self-compassion. She also deepened her commitment to balancing activism with personal well-being. Academically, Trinity continued to excel, integrating her experiences into her studies. Her senior thesis explored the intersection of youth empowerment and social policy, drawing on case studies from the Ripple Effect Network. The research was not just an academic exercise, but a tool to influence policymakers and educators to invest in youth-led initiatives. As graduation approached once again, Trinity reflected on the extraordinary journey. From a single school initiative to a nationwide movement, the ripple effect had transformed countless lives and sparked conversations that transcended traditional boundaries. The impact was tangible, but so was the work still ahead. Her next steps were clear: to professionalize the ripple effect, ensuring its longevity beyond her personal involvement. She planned to establish a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting youth activism and community development on a national scale. The vision was ambitious, but Trinity had learned that ambition combined with persistence could move mountains. The chapter of her life as a student was closing, but a new chapter as a leader and changemaker was beginning. Trinity knew that the ripple she had started would continue to grow, carried forward by the countless young people she had inspired and empowered. The future was uncertain, but the commitment to hope, justice, and collective action remained unwavering. In the face of daunting challenges, Trinity held fast to a simple truth. Change begins with a single ripple, but it's the collective waves that reshape the world. Graduation day arrived, with a mixture of triumph and uncertainty. The auditorium was filled with families, friends, and faculty, celebrating the achievements of a generation eager to step into the world. Trinity sat among her peers, the ripple effect story woven deeply into her identity. As her name was called and she walked across the stage, the applause echoed more than just personal accomplishment. It was the sound of a movement maturing, ready to face new horizons. As the caps flew into the air, Trinity's mind raced with plans and possibilities. She had spent years building something that began as a spark in a single school and grew into a nationwide network of empowered youth. Now, the challenge was to sustain that momentum beyond the safety of the academic environment and into the complex landscape of social activism and non-profit leadership. She understood that the true test was just beginning. Within weeks after graduation, Trinity launched the Ripple Effect Foundation, formalizing the movement into a non-profit organization. The foundation's mission was clear: to equip young leaders with the tools, resources, and platforms necessary to create meaningful change in their communities. Drawing on her extensive network, Trinity assembled a diverse board of advisors, including educators, activists, philanthropists, and youth representatives. The mix of experience and fresh perspectives was crucial to maintaining the Foundation's vitality and relevance. The Foundation's initial projects focused on scalability and sustainability. Trinity implemented training programs that emphasized leadership development, community organizing, and strategic advocacy. These programs were designed to be adaptable to different local contexts, ensuring that young activists could tailor their efforts to address the specific challenges facing their communities. Technology continued to play a vital role, with online courses, virtual workshops, and collaborative forums fostering connection across geographical divides. Fundraising efforts became a central focus. Trinity and her team learned to navigate the competitive world of grants, corporate sponsorships, and individual donations. Crafting compelling narratives that highlighted the tangible impacts of youth-led initiatives proved essential. Transparency and accountability were pillars of the Foundation's approach, building trust among donors and stakeholders. The journey was not without obstacles, but each challenge reinforced the Foundation's commitment to its vision. As the Foundation grew, Trinity emphasized the importance of mental health and well-being for activists. She recognized that sustaining a movement required caring for the individuals who carried its weight. Programs incorporating mindfulness, peer support, and self-care were integrated into training modules. These efforts helped build resilience and fostered a community culture that valued balance alongside passion. Trinity also sought to bridge gaps between youth activism and policymaking. She organized forums that brought young leaders into dialogue with elected officials, policymakers, and community influencers. These interactions opened pathways for youth voices to influence legislation, school policies, and public discourse. The Foundation's advocacy efforts extended beyond grassroots organizing into strategic policy engagement, recognizing that systemic change required both bottom-up and top-down approaches. International collaboration became another frontier. The Ripple Effect Foundation partnered with global youth organizations to share best practices and support cross-cultural initiatives. Trinity traveled abroad to conferences and summits, representing the Foundation and learning from activists in diverse settings. These experiences enriched her perspective and reinforced the universality of youth empowerment as a catalyst for social transformation. Throughout this expansion, Trinity remained grounded in the original spirit of the ripple effect, a belief in the power of individual and collective action to create ripples that grow into waves. She continued to engage directly with young activists, listening to their stories, challenges, and dreams. Their energy fueled her resolve and inspired continuous innovation within the Foundation. Personal sacrifices were part of the journey. Trinity often worked late nights, navigated complex interpersonal dynamics, and faced moments of doubt. Yet she found strength in community, faith in purpose, and joy in witnessing lives changed. The Foundation's impact stories, students overcoming adversity, communities revitalized, policies shifted, were constant reminders of why the work mattered. Looking forward, Trinity envisioned the Ripple Effect Foundation evolving into a legacy institution, one that would nurture generations of youth leaders dedicated to justice, equity, and community well-being. She planned to establish endowments, mentorship networks, and leadership incubators to ensure enduring support and growth. The goal was to create an ecosystem where young changemakers could thrive regardless of economic or social barriers. As she stood on the cusp of this new horizon, Trinity reflected on the journey from a single spark to a nationwide movement and beyond. The path had been marked by challenges, triumphs, learning, and growth. It was a testament to the resilience of youth and the transformative power of hope and action. Her story was far from over. The ripple she had set in motion was becoming a wave that could reshape society's understanding of leadership and change. With unwavering commitment and a heart full of purpose, Trinity stepped confidently into the future, ready to meet whatever came next.